Hi students, let's go ahead and get started. And this is 8.2 factor by GCF. Your GCF is the greatest common factor. So what I need you guys to do is go ahead and pause this video, write down the outline of your notes, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Right here I have a review, and this is asking us to find the GCF of each pair of monomials. What we're going to do is we're going to write the prime factorization of each coefficient, and then we're going to write the powers as products. So I went ahead and I kind of broke it down, and one way you can do this is 3, you can't break 3 down any further. X cubed says that we have 3 x's. 6, we can break it down as 2 times 3. X squared says that we have 2 x's. So once you have, once you factor out, let's see. Once you've done that step, what you want to do is you want to find, you want to align common factors or find common factors. So we know we have a pair of 3's. I'm going to take that out. Pair of x's. We also have another pair of x. Okay. And once you align the common factors, you write it out, you're going to find the product of the common factors. So that means that you're going to multiply and you're going to end up with 3x squared. That's your answer. That's the greatest common factor of each monomial. Okay, let's take a look at B. We have 18g squared and 27g cubed. So I'm going to rewrite 18g squared and 27g cubed. Again, I'm looking at what numbers I can break down. The 18. 2 times 9 is 18, but I'm thinking of 9. I can actually break 9 down into 3 and 3. 3 times 3 is 9. And g squared says I have 2 g's. Okay. All right, 27. 27 is 3 times 9. Just a moment. Sorry. Okay, 3 times 9. And again, I can break down 9 into 3 times 3. G cubed says I have 3 g's. Okay, once I've wrote out the prime factorization of each coefficient, I'm going to go ahead and align the common factors. So whatever they have in common, I'm going to circle it, write it out. I have a pair of 3's. I have another pair of 3's. Okay. Pair of g's and g. Go ahead and multiply it. 3 times 3 is 9. G times g is g squared. And there's your final answer. So we found the GCF of each pair of monomial, and that was a little review. Now let's jump right into example 1. It says factor by using the GCF. So we have 4x squared minus 3x. What you can do is you can actually break these two down and say, okay, what do we have in common? What can we pull out? Or you can simply get used to looking at the 4 and the 3 and say, hey, you know what? They don't have anything in common. But let's take a look at our x squared and x. I have 1x here and I have 2 x's here. So I know I can pull out 1x. If you pull out 1x, students, if you factor out 1x, then you have to decide, it's like undoing the distributive property. Okay, you have to say, okay, what do I need to multiply this x to make it a 4x squared? And it's 4x. Double check your work. 4x times x, that gives me 4x squared. So I'm undoing the distributive property. And then what do I need to multiply this x to make it a negative 3x? That's right, multiply it by a negative 3. So There's your answer. Okay. All right, so now I'm looking at 10, 20, and negative 5. 10, 20, and we can actually call this 5. 10, 20, and 5. What would be my GCF? You're asking yourself what number can go into 10, that can also go into 20, that also can go into 5. So I'm looking at the number 5. This is my smallest number. I know 5 can go into 5 one time, 5 can go into 24 times, and 5 can go into 10 2 times. So I know I can factor out a 5. Now let's take a look at our y's. We have y cubed, y squared, and we have y. And basically with your variables, you need to find the lowest power, which is y. So if I pull out 5y, you're going to take this 5y and you're going to ask yourself, what do I need to multiply 5y to make it 10y cubed? So I know I need to multiply 2. 2 times 5 gives me 10. How do I make y into y cubed? I have to multiply it by y squared. Okay, let's keep going. 5y. How do I turn 5y into 20y squared? Multiply this by a 4. How do I turn y into y squared? Multiply it by a y, and I can check my answer. 5 times 4 is 20. Y times y is y squared. Very nice. And how do I change this 5y into negative 5y? Simply multiply it by a negative 1. All right, there's your final answer. 5y parentheses 2y squared plus 4y minus 1. And students, if you're not comfortable and you're not sure if you did it right, take this 5y and distribute it. And if you get 10y cubed plus 20y squared minus 5y, you are on the right track. Okay? All right, let's keep going. Again, you're asking yourself what number can go into a negative 12x and a negative 8x. And they both actually have negatives, so I know I can factor out a negative. So what number can go into 12 and 8? I'm thinking 2 can go in, but we want our greatest common factor. So we can go a little bit higher. What about a 4? 4 can go into 12, 4 can also go into 8. What about an 8? Can 8 go into 12? It can't. 8 can go in 8, but not into 12. So your greatest common factor would be 4, negative 4. And then you're going to take a look at your x's. You have 1x here and you have 2 x's here. Again, we're going to pull out 1x. Okay? All right, so ask yourself, how do I get from a negative 4x to a negative 12x? What do I need to multiply? Negative 4x to make it a negative 12x. And the answer is 3. And what do I need to multiply a negative 4x to make it a negative 8x squared? Positive 2x. Positive 2x. So negative 4 times 2 gives me negative 8. And if I multiply it by x, x times x is x squared. There you have it. Okay, let's take a look at the last one. D, 5x squared plus 7. I'm looking at my 5. I'm looking at my 7. They don't have anything in common. There's no GCF that I can pull out from a 5 and 7. Now let's look at our variable. We have x squared. We don't have a variable here, students. So your final answer is going to be simply 5x squared plus 7. It's going to be, nothing is going to change. Okay? All right. Let's keep going. This is your last example, so example 2 and 3. Go ahead and pause the video, write out the outline of example 2 and 3, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Example 2 says factor out a common binomial factor. Okay, and you'll notice, students, it's already been done for you. Because we have a common binomial factor, binomial means 2, you're going to rewrite this. You're going to take out your x minus 3. And then what you're going to do is you'll notice that you have a 7 and a negative 2x. So you're going to kind of factor the x minus 3 out, but then you're going to combine the 7 minus 2x. And there's your answer. Okay, let's take a look at B, negative t squared plus 4 plus t squared plus 4. So t squared plus 4, t squared plus 4, they have that in common, so I'm going to bring those out. T squared plus 4. And notice how I have a negative t and imaginary 1 here. So negative t plus 1. And there's your answer. This is actually going to help us with example 3. It's called factor by grouping. So we're looking for a common binomial factor. Again, let's take a look at C. They have x plus 4 in common. So write that down, x plus 4. And I have a 9x out of here, a negative 5. We're going to rewrite that. We're going to put those together. There's your final answer. That's example 2. Okay, let's take a look at example 3. We call this factor by grouping. This is probably a little bit more difficult because you have 4 terms. So here we have 4 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. Anytime you have 4 or more terms, we can do what we call factor by grouping. You're going to see this in a little bit in math 2. You're definitely going to see this in math 3. So I like to share this with you right now. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to group these. Oops. You're going to group these terms. And you're going to ask yourself, we're basically going to factor out the GCF of 12a cubed minus 9a squared and 20a minus 15. And when you factor by grouping, you're looking for a common binomial factor. Okay, so again, 12a cubed minus 9a squared. What can go into 12? That can also go into 9. Okay, I'm thinking 3. So let me take out a 3. We factor out a 3. And then you're asking yourself, let's take a look at our a's. What's the lowest a power or exponent that we have? It's actually a squared, so we can pull that out. And then we're going to go ahead and ask ourselves, okay, 3a squared, what do I need to multiply 3a squared to make it a 12a cubed? I know 3 times 4 gives me 12, and a squared, in order for me to make a squared a cubed, I have to multiply it by a. Now, 3a squared, I need to make it a negative 9a squared. Okay, so 3 times what gives me a negative 9, and that's going to be a negative 3. Now, we already have an a squared, so that doesn't change. So we actually were able to factor out a 3a squared, and what's left on the inside is 4a minus 3. Okay, plus. Now, you should be thinking at this point, you should be thinking this 4a minus 3. I'm wondering if I can factor that out. If I factor out a 4a minus 3, will that work? You can actually look at the 20a minus 15 and do the exact same thing that we did here. You're going to ask yourself what number can go into 20 and what number can go into 15. I'm thinking 5. Okay, so if we factor out a 5, notice how we can't factor out an a because 15 does not have a variable. But let's take a look. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 4a is 20a. 5 times the negative 3 gives me a negative 15. Okay, so now we're back to factoring out a common binomial. Once you get to this point and you have something in common, this 4a minus 3, take it out. And then you're going to combine your 3a squared plus 5. And I actually want to rewrite this. 4a minus 3, 3a squared plus 5. And there's your final answer. Okay, let's go ahead and do one more just to kind of solidify it. I'm going to group these. And I'm going to group these. Okay, so I'm looking at this x plus 2 and I'm wondering, can I get rid of an x plus 2 out of here? So we have a 9x cubed plus 18x squared. We have 9 and 18. I'm thinking we can pull out a 9. We could factor out a 9. X cubed and x squared. Whoops. Forgot my variable. Forgot to leave room for my variable. I can take out x squared. Okay, what are we left with? 9x squared, how can I, so the 9 is there, it's just the variable. I need to multiply it by x to make it an x cubed. And then 9x squared, how do I make it 18x squared? The x squared is already there, so it's just a number. 9 times what gives me 18? 2. Guess what, students? We were able to factor out an x plus 2. I'm just going to rewrite this with the 1 here. Now, once we find a common binomial factor, go ahead and combine 9x squared plus 1. There's your final answer. Okay, go ahead and stop the video and start your homework.